Ville Seventh-day Adventist Church. We've got a lot of slides today, so we're going to get started here in the next minute or so. So everybody out in the lobby, if you want to come on in and we will get started. So I'm going to take questions at the end of today. So we will have paper in the pews later, so you can write down questions if you need paper or if you don't have something. And I'll answer questions at the end of all of our sessions today, so we don't have to break it up. So we're going to start with our first talk on trauma. So I want to start with some common stereotypes about doctors, because doctors are kind of nerdy people. I'm saying that because I'm one of them. I'm an internal medicine physician, so we're kind of known as the nerds or the dorks because we like to read and we like to diagnose and think and use our brains more than doing procedures. We actually kind of get paid to figure things out. So these are just some common stereotypes that people hear about doctors, and also some Christian stereotypes that I found that I thought were some of them are nice and some of them not so nice. So our example to people out in the community is what they think of when they think of Christian. So in case you don't know what an internal medicine physician is or how we're different from others, we are adult specialists. I'm different from Jay in that I don't do any delivering of babies or any children or any surgeries or procedures. So I basically see 18 up, and we are the basis for most of the medical specialists. So we're going to go through and kind of define what trauma is and start our talk here from this website, these definitions on the next slide, from mentalhealthcoalition.org. So this is my first time doing one of these talks, and I wasn't sure of the fonts and things for these buildings, so hopefully you can read it better than I can on the back wall. But trauma is an emotional or psychological response to a deeply distressing experience or situation. It typically creates a sense of fear that does not have to, but can have everlasting effects on well-being. Post-traumatic stress disorder is also a subtype of trauma, but it's also known as PTSD. It's a clinical mental health diagnosis resulting from traumatic experiences that leads to a specific set of symptoms, like hypervigilance, being startled easily, those kind of things. So the next slide here, we're going to talk about some myths about trauma and PTSD. Trauma is not, there's a lot of myths really about trauma and PTSD, but PTSD is not something that's all in your head. It definitely is something that's real and that people have real reactions to. If you ignore trauma, it will not go away. So these are things that people think if you just suppress things, they'll go away. They definitely don't. They rear their ugly head usually when you least expect it. People who experience trauma are broken. This is something they often feel. I had a patient yesterday tell me that, and that he could not believe that 20-some years later he was still feeling this way. And it's just, these are the things that people feel. They feel damaged, they feel broken, and that they're beyond help a lot of times. And if you don't know that about people around you and that's how they're feeling, you won't know how to relate. So this talk today is really about the first talk is the broadest. It's kind of what kind of leads to a lot of these other issues that we have with depression and anxiety and loneliness and addictions. So this is kind of the foundation for the talks the rest of the day. So here's the next slide is some experiences that are commonly considered traumatic and can lead to PTSD. So abuse, whether it's sexual, emotional, psychological, financial, is a traumatic event. So is intense heartbreak, natural disasters, if you were sick as a kid, medical interventions, things that happened to you as a child, death of loved ones, assault. So these kind of things set you up for whether or not you develop PTSD. And PTSD is one of those things that everybody, the majority of people go through trauma. And you can take people that go through the same situation, like the Holocaust, and some people will break down and give up and die pretty quickly. And others somehow have a resilience to survive and to make the best of a horrible situation, and they make it through. So there are things that we can learn about how to be resilient with trauma that is guaranteed to come in this world, and how to make your chances best for being somebody like Joseph that can take a bad situation and deal with it and let God lead. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is kind of learning about some of these traumas. So when I finished college, I had a year off between med school because I hadn't yet been accepted to medical school. And I was not a great test taker. So I went out to California for the summer to take a test-taking course that was my last chance for doing well on a standardized test. And in this course, I learned some pretty interesting things that apply now to these trauma reactions, and it suddenly is like a light bulb moment of test-taking skills to help you ingrain and make memories really deep, to remember things. Include the more senses you use, the deeper the ingrained memory. So if you smell things, if you taste things, if you can hear the sounds, that memory is deeper. So for studying skills, that's helpful for memorizing bones. You can make a song out of it. You can, use colored markers that smell like grape. You can do all sorts of little tricks to try to make that memory deeper in your brain. At the same time, when you have trauma, whether it's from intense heartbreak, domestic violence that you witness when you're a kid, combat, if you're a veteran and experiencing war, if you're, all sorts of things. So when your parents are sick or they're mentally ill or you're bullied, all these various things can increase your risk of having those memories be ingrained in your brain deep, okay? So you can taste tears. So an intense heartbreak can actually cause PTSD kind of reactions because of it being so deep and so ingrained. When you taste blood in your mouth, or you taste tears, and you smell the burning things from an accident, or you hear the screeching of the car tires. There are so many things that can trigger you just like that. And nobody around you seems to know why you're so freaked out by fireworks, but that you can drive 100 miles or ride 100 miles an hour on your motorcycle and think nothing of that danger, but fireworks flip you out. So these kind of things, if you don't understand, and I didn't understand until I started reading these books. So we're going to talk today about some of these books. This is called The Body Keeps the Score. So a lot of our quotes today are from this book. So I heard about this book and several of the books that we're using for today, read the books, and then started either giving these things out to multiple people or telling patients galore. So I've had colleagues that I've given this to. I've had multiple patients that I've told about it, and even if they don't like reading, they will go and get the book and read it. So, this helped me understand my patients better, and I felt the need to share it. So that's why we're talking about these things today. So this is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He's a psychiatrist that was part of the research that came up with when they were coming up with a name for PTSD, when it got named that, because it was called all sorts of things prior to that, from like shell shock to all sorts of things. So I'm going to read some of these quotes as is, and others I'm going to let you read yourself. But some of these, because I think it's kind of boring to just hear me read things to you all day. If I could have just read the whole book to you all day, that would have probably made me just as happy. But these are just a few of the quotes. So, we have learned that trauma is not just an event that took place sometime in the past. It is also the imprint left by that experience on mind, body, and brain. This imprint has ongoing consequences for how the human organism manages to survive in the present. Trauma results in fundamental reorganization of the way mind and brain manage perceptions. It changes not only the way we think and what we think about, but also our very capacity to think. So, a lot of times there's events that occur that you want to hide pretty well and not bring up. People like me that are kind of paid to ask questions can probe people pretty well for some pretty personal things. A lot of other people may not give up some of this information real easily unless they really trust you and really feel that they're safe with you, okay? This is slide 8. Let me make sure I'm on the right slides because mine's separate than yours. So long after a traumatic experience is over, it may be reactivated at the slightest hint of danger and mobilize disturbed brain circuits. This is like the fireworks. Okay, the fireworks can make you reactivate that danger signal. And they secrete massive amounts of stress hormones. This precipitates unpleasant emotions, intense physical sensations, and impulsive and aggressive actions. These people feeling out of control, survivors of trauma often begin to fear that they are damaged to the core and beyond redemption. So a lot of times, unfortunately, when you deal with trauma, or with anything, so trauma and a lot of things, we're pretty good at telling ourselves lies. Really, the greatest source, and he talks about this in this book, the greatest source of our suffering are the lies we tell ourselves. Like you're not good enough. You're damaged beyond control. Nobody's ever going to love you. Nobody's ever going to understand you or get you. These kind of things, unfortunately, are things we tell ourselves that kind of can put us down the wrong road even further and make us more hesitant to tell people what's going on because we feel like they're just not going to understand it. They're just not going to get it. So more than anything else, being able to have feel safe and have with other people defines your mental health. Safe connections are very important for a satisfying life. So, when scared, the next slide we'll go to. This quote about scared animals return home regardless of whether home is safe or frightening. If you've ever thought about a child that's abused, they're kind of like a scared animal. Their caretaker is their abuser. They have nowhere else to go. They have to go back if they're wanting food, if they're wanting shelter, if they're wanting clothing, if they're wanting to get off the street. And they have to go back to that situation with somebody that is supposed to be taking care of them, but is their source of pain and suffering. Okay? It is especially challenging for traumatized people to discern when they are actually safe and when they are able to activate their defenses, when to activate their defenses. So this goes back again to fireworks. People can't tell when fireworks are safe because of the explosions and the loud noise and the things and the memories that it brings back. But then they'll get on their motorcycle and drive 100 miles an hour, sometimes hoping that they will have an end that will put things to an end. So they do some things that are reckless and are definitely in danger, but that makes them feel more alive. So these kind of things, this book talks about even about why they wear their uniforms 20, 30, 40 years later, why they wear camouflage, and why they sometimes go back to those areas and are stuck in those areas of their former trauma, despite the rest of us going like, well, if it was so horrible, why are you reliving it and making yourself relive it by wearing this stuff? And yet, for them, it's the only time they felt alive. And things shut off after that moment. Their brain got rewired when that trauma occurred, and how they reacted, whether they were scared, they vomited, they peed in their pants, they froze and didn't do anything, they watched all their friends die around them, and were the sole survivor and had to live with that. And then how they reacted once they weren't frozen. Some people go and try to get revenge, and do horrible things to people to try to get revenge because of something that happened when they froze. So if you don't understand this about the people around you, because these are the people all around you, these are the people that are your neighbors, that are the veterans that live in your neighborhood, that are the kids that were abused growing up, or the kids that were bullied in their schools. If you don't know how to relate to these people that are just like you and me, then we're kind of losing our ability to be the helpers, okay? Which is what our job is. All right, so the next slide. All of us, but especially children, need such confidence that others will know, affirm, and cherish us. Without that, we can't develop a sense of agency that will enable us to assert, this is what I believe in. This is what I stand for. This is what I will devote myself to. As long as we feel safely held in the hearts and minds of the people who love us, we can climb mountains and cross deserts and stay up all night writing PowerPoint presentations. Okay? So children and adults will do anything for people they trust and whose opinion they value. Okay? So I'm not a public speaker, but you all, I value your opinion and your friendship, and I think you need to know these things. All right, so some bad statistics here. 70% of the adults have experienced at least one traumatic event. Most of the time, it's way more. Way more, okay? These are these are really hard to read questions. I'll read them for you. These are part of a study that they started back in the 1990s. Sounds really long ago. Man, that makes me feel old. So this was a study called the ACE study, and it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. It started with 10 questions. It has morphed to a little bit more, but these are 3 of the sample questions from that. And you can look those up online. You can look up all sorts of tests that you can take online that will give you scores from UCLA. There's all sorts of things out there that you can look into these things and see how many you might have experienced. So it's pretty profound, but these are the questions that are not just bulleted forms, but more detailed. So did a parent or other adult in your household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? Did they act in a way that made you feel afraid and that you might be physically hurt? Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or even hit you so hard that it left a mark, or you were injured? Did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? That your family didn't look out for each other, you didn't feel close to each other, and you didn't support each other? So those are 3 sample of the questions. The next slide kind of goes into the broad categories of more than the 10 things now that include these adverse childhood experiences. So we've got neglect, whether it be physical or emotional. We've got divorce. We've got discrimination. We've got growing up in a neighborhood where you don't feel safe. We've got bullying. We've got kids seeing their parents beat each other up. Incarceration of a parent, divorce of a parent, mentally ill parents. The things that aren't on here, I don't see, but, having a sibling commit suicide or a close friend commit suicide, that's pretty traumatic event. I had 2 classmates in grade school growing up, 2 out of my tiny little church school in Lexington, 2 that committed suicide out of our class of 5. 5, 6 was kind of the average of our class. 2 committed suicide. And one of those boys was the second in his family to commit suicide. The youngest and the oldest of that family. Okay? So, just to go back to that other one just a little bit, this even yesterday, new patient came in, telling me he was depressed for 20-some years. I had this with me because I was going to try to practice with my nurses, which didn't happen. But I said, hey, I've got my PowerPoint. Let me ask you some of these little questions here. Let's go through these and see how many numbers you have. So he was neglected emotionally. His parents just didn't pay attention to anything. His older sister didn't pay attention to anything, didn't know anything he was going through. They moved schools. He was bullied. Has never gotten over it. He's almost 40. He feels like he's damaged beyond repair. A lot of times, this is going to lead into some of our other talks. A lot of times when this kind of stuff happens, it leads to self-coping mechanisms, which are typically addictions to something that numbs you and makes you not feel what's going on. So the studies show that really the majority of people in America, 64%, have at least one of these childhood experiences. And there's 17, around 20% probably by now, that have reported 4 or more of these ACE, adverse childhood experiences. Females and several racial ethnic minority groups were at greater risk for experiencing 4 or more. Many people do not realize that exposure to these are associated with increased risk for health problems across your entire lifespan. So as the ACE study has shown, child abuse and neglect is the single most preventable cause of mental illness. That guy yesterday, neglect. The single most common cause of drug and alcohol abuse, and a significant contributor to leading causes of death, from diabetes to heart disease to cancer, suicide, stroke. So the next slide here, this is from the CDC website about the ACE childhood experiences. These are increased likelihood of numerous risk factors, including being in physical fights at school, carrying weapons, smoking, alcohol use, illicit drug use in adolescence and adulthood, early teenage pregnancies, STDs, now called STIs because nobody likes to say diseases, and multiple sexual partners, various mental health conditions, as well as suicide risk. So this is per the CDC website from a 2023 study. Next slide. Per the Center to Advance Trauma Health at UC San Francisco, ACEs without adequate buffering factors, such as the presence of a highly attentive parent or adult, can cause toxic stress. A type of stress that is so severe and prolonged that it has lasting damage and impacts the body and mind and are detectable as early as infancy. So you've heard the studies probably about the infants that are given all the food and shelter and clothing they need, but they die if they don't have human contact. okay? And unfortunately, the studies and even this book talk about how it's not just the contact, it's how your parent reacts to you. Whether they are mad at you because you're crying, whether they look at you with love, whether they are depressed because of you. All of that impacts how the infant bonds with the mother and feels loved. In infancy, this starts. So, unfortunately, hurt people. A lot of times, parents do the best they can, and I am not a parent. So, I'll say that right now. I'm not a parent. Parents do the best they can do, and sometimes they do things opposite because of what their parents did. And sometimes you're kind of caught at the two extremes instead of in the middle, which is kind of the goal, but it's hard to get there sometimes when you're just trying so hard to keep from becoming your parent. Okay? So, I'm going to say this a couple times through here for everyone to know, whether you're online or you're here. If you need to talk to somebody, there are things online. Instead of 911, you can call 988. There is a mental health hotline. There is a mental health chat that you can text 988 and talk to a mental health person. If you ever need to talk to somebody about any of this mental health stuff, talk to a teacher, talk to your friend, talk to your pastor, your counselor, somebody. Don't ignore it, because it will not go away by suppressing things. All right, so next slide here. These findings are pretty horrible when you have 4 or more of the ACEs, which so many people do. So 1.5 times almost to have diabetes, 2 to 3 times risk to have stroke, cancer, heart disease, 5 times more likely to have major depression, 10 times more likely to have problematic drug use, and 37.5 times more likely to attempt suicide if you have 4 of those things, which is not that hard to get to. I mean, in terms of bullying, being in a neighborhood you don't feel safe. If you live in town, you probably don't feel real safe letting your kids walk out and down the street, or knowing that your neighbor was locked up for something, and let's go play out in the yard. It's one of those things that there's a lot of people that tick off these boxes that you don't even know about, and they might be acting a certain way because they don't even know about, hey, this is why I am the way I am. Okay? So the next one here, managing your terror all by yourself gives rise to another set of problems: dissociation, despair, addictions, a chronic sense of panic, and relationships that are marked by alienation, disconnections, and explosions. Patients with these histories rarely make the connection between what happened a long time ago and how they are currently feeling and behaving. Everything just seems unmanageable. All right, next slide. For our physiology to calm down, heal, and grow, we need a visceral feeling of safety. So visceral kind of means your gut. It's kind of an easy way of saying that, but it's also a deep inward feeling rather than an intellect. It's kind of your gut as opposed to your brain or your heart, like we used to say. Feel it with your heart or your gut instincts. That's your visceral feeling. Okay, so that's your visceral feeling of safety that you have to have a safe area to grow to have this. No doctor can write a prescription for friendship and love. I wish we could. If somebody could market that, they would be millionaires. These are complex, very hard-earned capacities. These are things that are really hard to get people to open up and talk about before they'll even agree to seek help. Sometimes you just look at them and you're just like, yeah, let me put my finger on this. You got something. Let me start poking. And you start prodding, and then you make them cry, and then you feel kind of bad and have to hand them the tissue box and get your social worker to come and talk with them. But that's what you need a lot of times to do to get them on the path of, okay, this is what happened, and we need to address it. And it can be 50, 80 years later. I had another patient yesterday, 87, that is still having nightmares from military experience, that he does not want to sleep at all. He hates sleep because they start every night, despite meds, despite being 87 years old, still having it. All right, so now that I've depressed everybody, we're going to talk about how to make you more resilient and some things that we can do to make us more likely to be those people that sail through things instead of be knocked down by things when life comes along and smacks you, okay? So these are just some healing affirmations, that really sometimes people just need to hear it when they're talking, and they need you to stop talking sometimes and listen. And if they want to hear something, just say, you're not alone. You deserve to feel the way you feel. You are worthy of taking up space. You are worthy of being loved. You are worthy of taking my time. You are worthy. You are not alone. This does not define you and who you are and who you can become. Okay? These people have worth. They're no more, less of worth than we are. So Christ came to die for them just as he did for us. Amen. So we need to learn some things here. So here's some ways we're going to learn protective factors for trauma. So there's an article here by Robert. Actually, the article is written by Angela Haupt. I can't pronounce that very well, but she's quoting a Dr. Robert Enright, who did his basic career studying forgiveness, which sounds kind of cool to me. That was at University. He's a guy at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and some of these quotes are actually from him. So it's forgiveness has not been put on the table clearly enough in any society, anywhere in the history of mankind. And understanding what forgiveness means is the first step to getting better at practicing it. So it's something you got to practice, not just expect that it's going to fall in your lap. Forgiveness is being good to those who are not good to you. Next slide. Another important distinction is that forgiveness... That's all right. I'll go back here. Let's see here. Is that... 22. Okay. Yeah. So defining what forgiveness is not is also important. Forgiveness isn't excusing what the other person did. It doesn't let them off the hook. Okay. It basically it's if somebody steals from you, you're really not going to go and give them money again, but you're going to forgive them. Okay. So that's it's not saying, okay, I forgive you, but here's another $100. go squander it, again. It also doesn't mean to forgive and forget. So forgiveness does not mean forgetting what somebody did. It again means, okay, you stole my money. I'm not going to do this again because I'm not going to forget what you did last time. But I'm going to forgive you and move on as if it didn't happen. But I remember. Okay? I'm just going to let it go. All right, next slide. So another important distinction is that forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciliation. Reconciliation is when two or more people come together in mutual trust. If you're in an abusive relationship, you might forgive your abuser, but you don't need to stay in a relationship with them. Okay? It is okay to take care of yourself and say, okay, we need some space. All right, so Dr. Saltz from the New York Presbyterian Hospital, she's a clinical associate of psychiatry. She states that chronic anger, which is we often experience when we haven't forgiven someone, isn't healthy. I think we all know that anger isn't real healthy. Most anger is not justifiably in our lives, okay? People who have not practiced forgiveness are also sometimes preoccupied with vengeance, which is punishment inflicted in retaliation for a wrong. and that isn't healthy. And you might see people acting things out around you that you're like, what is going on? And it's usually because of this. They have this anger towards somebody and they will not let it go. And there are people that I know that are like, there's no way I will ever forgive those people for what they did. It's not going to ever happen. And they're the ones that are going to hold on to that, and it's going to hurt for the rest of their life. The person that did it to them, that's not going to hurt them, that you haven't forgiven them. All right, next slide here. So there's 5 tips that we're going to go through from this article about how you may learn to practice how to forgive a little bit better, okay? So first you're going to start with the uncovering phase, and that's basically where you're clarifying yourself who did what and to whom and how this offense compromised your life, okay? Are you still ruminating about something that happened 40 years ago that somebody did to you? So kind of understanding where things went down that pathway is the first step of kind of leading you to forgiveness. All right, number 2, think about forgiveness as something you're doing for you, not for them, okay? Often people approach forgiveness as a favor they're doing for the other person. You need to shift it out of that mind frame to be helpful. You need to think about, this is what I'm doing to make myself move on and staying from being angry. Number 3, engaging in some thinking exercises. So more often than not, those who act very unfairly against others have been treated very unfairly themselves. So putting yourselves in their shoes, hurt people. So sometimes you have to think about, what did they go through that made them into this kind of person? And maybe if I was in those same situations, I would react the same way. So it kind of puts yourself into a different mindset when you're like, maybe I need to step back and think about this, okay? Number 4, do something good for the person who wronged you. At some point, you might be ready to tell them, talk to them, send them an email and let it go. Or if they're already deceased, you can donate money in their name. You can talk nicely about them to people and say good things and positive things about these people that have wronged you. And number 5, under forgiveness, is remember that forgiveness can take time. So it's not an overnight thing, and it can take as long as it takes. Basically, there's no timeline. It's your timeline. You go as fast or slow as you need to go. Okay. So the next main protective thing is gratitude. Per UCLA Health.org article, Health Benefits of Gratitude, there's lots. Okay, so this is from 2023. So they've shown that you'll actually get the biggest health benefits of gratitude when it becomes a habitual part of your thought processes. It says even allotting some time each day or week to prioritize gratitude can be beneficial. So if anybody has any idea what we do on Sabbath, it's kind of a day of gratitude, in my opinion, and it's one of the best days to not only show your gratitude to God, but to Bill and Robert and Marcy and Hannah and all these people around you that you're grateful for, and that you're thankful for all the little ways that you guys help us. And Tom and Nancy for coming, and friends from Somerset coming and listening today. So we're grateful, and when we speak our gratitude to people, it actually helps us in immense ways. So, some ways that it helps us, it reduces depression. So there's several studies about how it does this, over 70, from lots of people, about how focusing on gratitude and having a glass half full kind of mentality, and I'm going to think about how I'm thankful for things instead of who's done me wrong and how I'm going to get back at them, you're healthier, okay? So it reduces depression. It lessens anxiety. So gratitude can be a coping tool for anxiety. So if you're very anxious, it's one of those things to suddenly change your mindset and start writing down some things you're grateful for. You can start with that day. I'm grateful I have indoor plumbing. I'm grateful that it's not storming outside, so when I go outside, I can see the stars, because I walk at 4 o'clock in the morning. I like to see the stars and the moon with my dog when we're out walking. And there's some things that you can just be very thankful for that really help take your mind off of the craziness that is going on all around us. Okay? So number 3, it supports heart health. So there's lots of studies about how it can actually drop your diastolic blood pressure. So your systolic blood pressure is the top number on your blood pressure. Diastolic's bottom. Top, the way I tell people is that's how well your heart contracts. Bottom is how well it relaxes. So this helps you relax better. That's what you want to do, okay? You don't want to be constantly in a fight or flight situation. You want to be in the kind of relaxed, digest and whatever the other word is, that part of that might be there, maybe not. Rest and digest. I knew I'd see it. Rest and digest is the parasympathetic. So it actually activates these restful, lowering blood pressure lowering things when you practice gratitude on a regular basis. All right, let's see here. Number 5, it improves your sleep. So especially if you do this right before you go to bed and make a habit of listing or writing down the things you're thankful for that occurred that day, it kind of puts you in a better mindset to go to sleep before, as opposed to, what happened today in the news? Or what happened in that email I just got from work? Or things like that. Make a habit to make it a practice and a regular practice. So some tips for practicing this regularly, really, journaling helps a lot. Writing it down and then hitting pause. What this is really talking about is, instead of just quickly telling people, thank you for coming, say, thank you for coming all the way from Lexington to listen to me talk. Okay? Or thank you for arranging music and asking me to get things ahead of time, so I had to actually think about things and put pen to paper and come up with things. So thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Bill, for being a backup in case I freaked out today and couldn't get up and speak. So, those are specific things that when you share your gratitude, it makes more than just saying thanks. Thanks, Mom, for making my favorite soup. All right. So here are some other ways. Redirecting your thoughts. You can step back, think about what really bothered you that day, and then shift your focus, okay? You can, at the end of the day, when you're doing your little gratitude thing, you can send a note to somebody and say, hey, I'm so thankful for you coming to my rescue at work today when I was, flailing or whatever, when, I was having a bad day and you came and brought me coffee or a donut. So, those kind of things really mean a whole lot to people when you tell them you meant a lot to me, okay? So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about diet today. That's the next slide. There are protective things about diet, but a lot of people get freaked out when I talk about diet and are afraid to bring things to potluck because of me talking about diet. So we're not going to go there a whole lot today. These are things that will help your gut. So your gut-brain axis, I wanted to have a big focus on microbiome today. However, it means more to me than probably any of you all, so I didn't want to bore you too much. So this is the only slide on diet. So there's things that will improve your health risk, and your gut is big time associated with how you respond to these attacks on you, okay? So the more diversity of plants you eat, the better. The goal is to have more than 30 a week. There are some tribes in South America that have more than 100 plants a week, okay? And this isn't a sprinkle of something. This is an actual serving, okay? So herbs do count as part of those things, but not a sprinkle. We're talking about like parsley and tabbouleh and various things like that where you use a lot of herbs and you use a lot of different grains and beans. Fermented foods like pickles, that you make yourself, not with the vinegar, things that are naturally sourdough. Those kind of things actually will improve the healthy bacteria in your gut that will make you more resilient to everything. Okay? So you want to avoid some things that will impair it. Artificial sweeteners, so all those diet drinks. Ultra-processed foods, you've heard of foods. Ultra-processed foods are things that you look at the label and you're like, where in the heck would I get those ingredients if I was going to make anything like this? You wouldn't find those ingredients at a store. Okay? Those things you kind of want to avoid as much as possible, like the plague. But they're tasty, but that's because they're chemicals intended to make you addicted to it. Eating meals on a regular time schedule actually has a lot to do with your microbiome as well, which is why people with shift work actually have more problems with their gut. Okay, so spending time in nature, this is for your gut and for your immunity. There are so many studies. I could have done probably the whole talk even on just that. Each variety of apple, which there's tons of apples, have their own unique microbiome. So eating one variety of apple your whole life and not trying other varieties like galas, which I'm not a fan of really, but Red Delicious, Gold Delicious, all these various apples, they all have something unique in them that is beneficial to you and was created by God that knows exactly what we need. Okay? So mixing it up, having a wide variety of things that you eat, that you plant, that you work in the ground, your hands getting dirty, your hands working with soil actually improves your cognition and how your emotional reactivity to things are, okay? So things that you do with your hands, whether it's sourdough bread, gardening, music, things like that actually help with your emotional stability. Okay? Each animal has their own microbiome. So being exposed to pets actually makes your kids more likely to have a resilient immune system. Playing in the dirt is actually good for you. Avoiding it is actually going to lead to more problems and more health issues and more restrictions, which actually make you sicker and sicker. Okay? So playing in the dirt is good. Having multiple types of animals, whether they're birds or fish. I don't know you can snuggle fish very well, but birds you definitely can. They sit on my shoulder every now and then and like to they know if I'm upset and they will just sit there and kind of come up close to my shoulder. My birds will. Okay, so your horses you can give a hug to and kiss their nose. And yes, you get some of their microbiome when you kiss their nose. So your dog, all these pets will affect your gut health and make you more resilient and make your immune system stronger and make you more likely to be healthy. Okay? So there's a study from UCLA beginning of this year about how this is kind of a little boring study, but basically they did kids outside playing outdoors and some that were indoors, and the ones that were outside had a lot healthier inflammatory markers and immune health. So that was a very, you can Google these things and find all sorts of articles, and the microbiome is something that they've been kind of coming out in articles about the past 10 years maybe. So research is profound with it, but when you even just Google, like, how does trauma relate to my gut, my microbiome, and what kind of things can I do to protect it, it will tell you what the studies, what the studies show. So the next clip, we're going to actually show a video that's 5 minutes long, so we're doing okay on time so far. So I'm going to do a video here that's really about spending time in nature and a Berkeley study. So 5-minute video. Maybe. As soon as it starts working. I know. I heard it earlier. Well, basically, it is a Berkeley student that's a veteran, so he'll come up here in a second.
War changes you by making you only follow orders and question nothing.
Experiencing awe changes us by making us wonder and question everything.
War makes you turn off your emotions.
Awe turns us on to new feelings.
War changes you by closing you off to the rest of the world.
Awe changes us by expanding our world. And that can change everything.
My name is Jack Garner. I'm a junior here at Cal. I'm studying political economy, and I'm a combat veteran. I went on two different deployments, one in 2009 and one in 2010. They were combat deployments to Afghanistan. They definitely changed my life. They changed my personality. They affected a lot of how I interact with people, with the world. And I actually got diagnosed with PTSD.
My name is Craig Anderson, and I'm a sixth-year PhD student in the social and personality area in the psychology department. I have specific interest in the emotion of awe. Awe makes people curious about their physical and social environment.
It's really hard to transition back. It is. Even though I say it was very smooth for me, I still had a lot of wall to dig through so you can stomach all these interactions, stomach all this that happen.
We've tested the curiosity that people feel while they're out in nature has downstream social benefits. We partnered with the Sierra Club, who had a program of getting people out into nature by going whitewater rafting. Military veterans were a population that we had in mind that might especially benefit from being in the outdoors.
I initially wasn't really sure how much fun I would have or if it affect me much. I don't particularly seek out like hiking or anything right now.
We use three different methods in this study. So we ask about things like anxiety, how well people have been sleeping, how curious they are, and then we followed up 1 week later. We also collected saliva because the emotions that people feel are tightly related to physiological processes. And finally, we had GoPro cameras. We go through the footage to code for things like emotion expression, working together as a team. If somebody falls out of the raft, who helps them get back in. One of the most fascinating things I've seen is kind of the transformation over the day, where people lose that fear and are really enjoying themselves, playing with others, getting in splash fights, jumping into the water and going swimming. It's a lot of fun to watch.
I had a great time. It was a whole lot of fun. The experience itself was just so touching and so much fun. That it really struck me incredibly. It's very awesome. I think it's really interesting that even though I spend a lot of time with the other Cal veterans, that normally we end up drinking, we nostalgic about combat, we talk about previous experience in the military, and it's almost like we're stuck in it. However, on this rafting trip, we ended up never talking about combat. I felt like we were really living in the moment. And it really felt like we were almost moving on beyond our hangouts.
The veterans, a week after the rafting trip, reported lower post-traumatic stress and anxiety. It's my hope that this research will help make it possible for people to get prescriptions to get out into the outdoors to help them with their physical, mental, and social health.
going on the trip helped me kind of analyze my own feelings and able to bring them to the surface. And I'm hoping that's going to be something that I can stick with me and help me in the future as I recover from my experiences.
All right, so our last protective part or activity is singing. And there's 10 things we're going to go through about the benefits to your health from singing. So singing, the studies have shown it relieves, lowers the stress hormone cortisol. It reduces it. However, the caveat to that was it's in a place that doesn't make you anxious. Okay, so if you're singing around bullies, you're not going to be lowering your cortisol level. So sing in a safe spot with friends, okay? Or sing in your shower, or sing in your car. There's a BBC podcast that was called Just One Thing with Michael Mosley, and he had an entire episode on the benefits of singing and how it actually improves and stimulates your immune system. There is a new, so most people know when you talk about cannabinoids, they know what that means. This new system of endocannabinoids is something that they're now discovering how internal natural chemicals have the same effect as things that people use to get high. However, those synthetic things have all the negative side effects of them, okay? Whereas the internal ones that are stimulated by like exercise and singing don't have those bad effects. And yet there's a study showing that it actually reduced, it actually increased this healthy benefit of feeling good by singing in a choir. So Great Britain actually has community choirs that you can be prescribed to go to. Can you imagine that in America? That would be incredible if I could write a prescription to say, hey, you need to go have some singing therapy, or you need to go take a camping trip over the weekend and get some sleep. Those would be incredible prescriptions if I could write them and get anybody to do them. But community choirs, they can refer people to and actually improve their social connections by having them bond. It's kind of like a team sport. They're bonding and harmonizing with the people around them. So being in a choir is very beneficial, which we used to have one in Lexington when Pavel was around, and they still have one, but I was in choir then with Jay years ago. So singing is actually a very important thing for stimulating your immune system. The next slide, it increases your pain threshold, so you can actually endure more pain and have it not affect you as much and be more resilient when you have a higher threshold. So singing helps that as well. It also improves, it may improve your snoring. That one they weren't totally set on. It improves lung function. So there's actually some conditions that have been shown to be benefited by singing, which include things like COPD and asthma, cystic fibrosis, cancer, multiple sclerosis, even quadriplegics have been shown to be benefited by singing. Number 6, it develops a sense of belonging connection, kind of like that oxytocin bonding hormone that infants feel for their mother. They also have that hormone when you're in a sports team, and this is with choirs and singing in a group where it releases that oxytocin. It enhances memory in people with dementia. So you can actually find studies galore of people that are flat-faced, demented, not being able to say anything, remember anything, and you play a song that triggers something, and suddenly their eyes start coming into focus, and you start seeing the person that used to be there. It helps with grief. Lots of studies about how people dealing with grief have been benefited by being in a group singing. It also helps people with speaking ability, so people that have stuttering problems or Parkinson's or had a stroke or autistic, singing actually improves that. I might have skipped that one. Number 9, improves mental health and mood. I must have skipped that one. But that's the 10. And so next, for the church service, we are going to sing quite a bit, okay? And if I run out of things to talk about, we can always sing, or if I lose my voice, we can always sing the rest of the day, and we all be benefited by it. But that's we're going to end here for the morning, and then we'll pick back up for church service. So I'm going to say a word of prayer here, and then we're going to break for a short break before our service. Okay, so bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for your love and your protection and your ways of keeping us safe and making us more resilient. And I pray that you will help us to see those around us that are hurting, know how to help, be a listening ear, and learn how to sing and share praises and benefit our immune system. In your name I pray.